Green Chaos Emerald. It is the only one whose color matches its name, and that is not a coincidence. When Sonic the Hedgehog launched on the Mega Drive on 23 June 1991, the special stage awarded 6 gems, and the green one was the anchor of the set. A real emerald is green, so the artifact called an emerald had to have a green member, or the name would collapse. It has survived every single redesign the franchise has ever attempted. Colors have been added, retired, and swapped out from 1991 onward, but the green Chaos Emerald has never once been removed from the lineup, making it the longest-serving object in the entire series apart from Sonic himself. Green is also the color the series reserves for its most powerful emerald-derived artifacts. The Master Emerald is green. The lead Super Emerald in Sonic 3 and Knuckles is green. The gem at the center of the 2022 film Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is green. If a piece of chaos energy is meant to read as fundamental rather than one of 7, the art team reaches for green. On the original Mega Drive hardware, it was rendered in roughly 3 shades: a bright highlight, a mid-tone body, and a dark facet edge, because the console could only display 61 colors simultaneously out of a 512-color master palette, and each of the 6 emeralds had to be instantly distinguishable on the results screen. Flat, saturated, unmistakable. The design brief was legibility, and green got there first. Blue Chaos Emerald. There is a reason this one shows up in more promotional artwork than any other. Blue is Sonic's own color, and pairing the character with a blue gem produces the cleanest possible image, which is why the Blue Chaos Emerald has appeared on box art, in trailers, and in merchandise more often than its odds of 1 in 7 would suggest. It was present at the very beginning, one of the original 6 from the 16-bit Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991, and like green, it has never been retired. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles in 1994, the emeralds were rendered in an Asher-style step cut, a square outline with concentric stepped facets, and the blue emerald in that cut is one of the most reproduced sprites in Mega Drive history, appearing on the save file select screen where players track their collection across 3 separate save slots. Modern depictions switch to a brilliant cut, the standard 58-facet round shape you would see on a diamond, and blue benefits from that change more than most, because the extra facet lines break up what would otherwise be a solid block of color. It is also the emerald most frequently used in gameplay tutorials and demo builds, because a blue gem against Green Hill Zone's blue sky and green grass reads instantly at speed. Small detail, enormous consequences for how often you have seen it. When someone who has never played a Sonic game pictures a Chaos Emerald, there is a good chance they are picturing this one. Yellow Chaos Emerald. This is the color of the payoff. Collect all 7 emeralds and the transformation you unlock turns Sonic gold, which means yellow is permanently associated with the thing the emeralds exist to produce, rather than with any single stone. The yellow emerald has been in the lineup since the original 6 of 1991, and, like green and blue, has never been dropped. Its most interesting property is a technical one. Yellow is the hardest emerald to render convincingly, because a gemstone reads as a gemstone through the contrast between its bright facets and its dark shadowed edges, and yellow has very little room beneath it before it turns brown. On the Mega Drive, the yellow emerald was consistently the flattest looking of the set for exactly that reason, and it was not until the transition to 3D, starting with Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast in Japan on 23 December 1998, that yellow gained enough shading range to look like glass rather than a flat sticker. The 3D emeralds were rendered as translucent objects with internal refraction and a specular highlight that tracked the camera, and yellow was arguably the biggest beneficiary. It is also the color most commonly used for the Chaos Emerald in Sonic's hand during Super Transformation cutscenes, a visual rhyme with the gold form itself. 7 stones go in, 1 color comes out. Yellow is the one that was already there. Red Chaos Emerald? Red is the aggression color, and the series uses it accordingly. Present in the original 6 from 1991, the red Chaos Emerald is the one most often paired with the franchise's angrier characters in artwork and in adaptations. Knuckles is red, Shadow's stripes and shoes are red, and both are characters whose stories orbit chaos energy far more tightly than most. Mechanically, it is identical to the other 6, which is the crucial thing to understand about all of them. No individual Chaos Emerald has ever been given a unique power in a mainline game. They are interchangeable by design, and the only thing distinguishing them is color. That interchangeability is precisely why the special stage structure works. You need 7, any 7, and the game does not care which order they arrive in. Red's most notable technical moment came in Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in February 1994, where the special stage was rebuilt as a rotating half-pipe rendered in scaled sprites, and the emerald sitting at the end of each stage rotated in place with a shine sweep animation across its facets. On a Mega Drive, that shine effect was achieved by cycling the palette entry rather than redrawing the sprite, a standard trick of the era that cost almost nothing in processing time. Red, with its narrow palette range, cycled the least convincingly of the seven. It is the emerald that most rewarded the leap to modern rendering. Purple Chaos Emerald. The seventh emerald is younger than the other 6 by 17 months. Sonic the Hedgehog launched with 6 Chaos Emeralds in June 1991, and it was Sonic the Hedgehog 2, released on 24 November 1992 in the coordinated global launch Sega-branded Sonic Tuesday, that added a 7th and fixed the number at 7 permanently. That 7th edition was purple, and its arrival is directly tied to the introduction of Super Sonic, because Sonic 2 was the game that first let players transform, and the design team needed a set size that felt complete and slightly mythic rather than merely even. 7 does that work, 6 does not. Purple has stayed in the roster continuously ever since, surviving the 1994 color revision that removed pink, and it appears in the modern canonical 7 of green, red, blue, yellow, purple, cyan, and white. It is also the emerald that sits at the darkest end of the palette, which makes it the hardest to spot in a busy level, and the one most often given an artificial outer glow in 3D games so it does not disappear against shadowed geometry. In Sonic Adventure 2, released on 19 June 2001, the emeralds were collectible plot objects rather than special stage rewards, and the darker stones needed that treatment badly. Purple is the newcomer that has been around for 34 years, and the one that made Super Sonic possible. Cyan Chaos Emerald. This one is a replacement, and the emerald it replaced was pink. When Sonic the Hedgehog 3 arrived on 2 February 1994, followed by Sonic and Knuckles on 18 October of the same year, the emerald palette was quietly revised. The pink stone from the 1991 lineup was dropped, and a cyan one took its slot. No in-universe explanation was ever offered, and none was needed, because the change was almost certainly practical. Sonic 3 introduced a save system with a file select screen displaying every emerald you had collected as a small icon, and pink and red sat too close together at that size on a CRT, particularly on the RF connections most households were still using in 1994. Cyan separates cleanly from every other color in the set. It has been in the canonical 7 ever since, which means the modern lineup is the Sonic 3 lineup rather than the original one. Cyan is also the color most associated with chaos control in later games, the emerald-powered ability to warp space and freeze time that Shadow introduces in Sonic Adventure 2, and the visual effect for that ability is rendered in pale blue-green almost every time it appears. Whether that was deliberate or simply what energy looked like in 2001 is unclear. Either way, the emerald that exists because pink was hard to read on a television has ended up defining the look of the series' signature power. White Chaos Emerald. The pale one has had the messiest history of the 7. In the original Sonic the Hedgehog in 1991, it was rendered as silver, closer to a polished metal than a gemstone, and over the following decade it drifted through gray, off-white, and near-transparent depictions before settling as white in the modern canonical lineup of green, red, blue, yellow, purple, cyan, and white. The instability is a rendering problem rather than a design one. A white gem is the hardest object to draw convincingly in any medium, because gemstones read as gems through internal color and refraction, and a colorless stone has neither. On the Mega Drive it looked like a chunk of chrome. In 3D it finally worked, because engines could render it as a clear crystal with rainbow dispersion catching the light, which is what a real colorless brilliant cut stone actually does. There is one significant complication with white. A Chaos Emerald that has been fully drained of its power also appears gray or colorless, which means the white emerald and a dead emerald can look near identical depending on the artist and the game. Sonic Adventure and its sequel both lean on drained emerald imagery for dramatic beats, and the visual overlap has caused genuine confusion among fans for years. The purest emerald and the exhausted one wear almost the same face. Merchandise has quietly settled the question in a way the games never did. Figure lines that ship a Chaos Emerald accessory almost always render the 7th stone in a clear or frosted plastic rather than an opaque gray, because a colorless translucent gem reads as valuable on a shelf, and a gray one reads as a pebble. Pink Chaos Emerald. This is the one that was deleted. When Sonic the Hedgehog shipped in June 1991, its 6 Chaos Emeralds were blue, green, yellow, red, pink, and silver, and the pink stone was collected exactly the same way as every other. by clearing one of the game's rotating maze special stages, entered by finishing a level with 50 rings and hitting the giant ring at the goal. It survived the addition of purple in Sonic 2 in 1992, making a 7-emerald set that briefly contained both pink and purple. Then Sonic 3 and Knuckles arrived in 1994, and pink was gone, swapped for cyan, and it has never returned to a mainline game in over 3 decades. That makes the pink Chaos Emerald the single rarest object in the entire franchise's core iconography, a canonical, collectible, plot-relevant item that existed for roughly 3 years and then simply stopped. It still turns up in classic-era merchandise, in fan projects, and occasionally in retro-styled artwork where the 1991 palette is being deliberately referenced, and its absence is one of the more reliable ways to date a piece of Sonic art. If you see a pink Chaos Emerald, you are looking at something either made before 1994 or made deliberately in that style. Nothing was ever said about where it went. It was there, and then it was cyan. Silver Chaos Emerald. The other casualty of the classic era, and a subtler one, because silver did not vanish so much as evolve. The original 1991 lineup included a silver emerald rendered in cool grays with a bright metallic highlight, and by the modern era that slot had become white. Whether you count that as a color being replaced or a color being refined depends on how strictly you read the sprites, and the fan community has never fully agreed. What is not in dispute is that the 1991 silver stone looked genuinely different. It had a hard, reflective, almost mirrored quality that the later white emerald traded away for translucency. The change tracks a broader shift in how the series treats chaos energy. In the classic games, the emeralds are hard objects, solid, mineral, gem-like. From Sonic Adventure onward, they are luminous, semi-transparent, and clearly containers for something, and metallic silver simply does not communicate contains raw energy, the way glowing white glass does. Silver also has an awkward secondary meaning that the modern series had to work around, because a gray or colorless Chaos Emerald is the standard visual shorthand for a depleted one. Rendering a fully charged emerald in the same palette as a dead one is a legibility failure. Silver was, in effect, retired for being ambiguous. It remains one of the clearest fingerprints of a pre-1994 Sonic design. Gray Chaos Emerald. This is not a color in the lineup, it is a condition, and it is the most narratively loaded emerald appearance in the series. A Chaos Emerald that has had its energy fully drained turns gray and colorless, losing the internal glow that marks a charged stone, and the series uses that image whenever it wants to show that something has gone catastrophically wrong. The emeralds are described in-universe as generating and containing effectively unlimited chaos energy, so a gray one is a statement that something has managed to take more out of them than they can produce, which is supposed to be impossible. Sonic Adventure 2, released on 19 June 2001, builds an entire act around it. The Eclipse cannon aboard the Space Colony Ark draws on all 7 emeralds simultaneously and burns through them. And the visual of drained, lifeless stones is the moment the plot stakes become real. The gray state also creates the design problem that reshaped the white emerald, since a colorless charged stone and a colorless dead one are nearly indistinguishable in a still image. Different games solve it differently. Some add a residual glow, some crack the surface, some simply desaturate the entire scene. It is the only emerald appearance defined by absence rather than presence, and it is the closest the franchise comes to depicting these objects as mortal. Super Emeralds. 7 larger, more powerful stones, and one of the strangest one-off ideas in Sonic history. The Super Emeralds appear in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the combined game formed by locking Sonic 3 onto the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge in October 1994, and they are created rather than found. Having collected all 7 Chaos Emeralds, the player reaches Hidden Palace Zone, and each Chaos Emerald is elevated into a Super Emerald through a second, separate set of special stages built around the Blue Sphere minigame, a first-person grid puzzle where the player rolls across a rotating checkerboard converting blue spheres to red. Complete all 7 and you have the full Super Emerald set, rendered in green, marigold, blue, magenta, vermilion, aquamarine, and platinum, a palette that overlaps with the Chaos Emeralds without matching it. Visually, they are also cut differently. Where the Chaos Emeralds in that game use a squared-off Asher-style step cut, the Super Emeralds are brilliant diamond-cut gems, noticeably larger and drawn with more facets. What they unlock is the Hyper Transformations, Hyper Sonic, who flashes through the full spectrum and can clear a screen of enemies with a mid-air dash, Hyper Knuckles, and Super Tails, who is accompanied by 4 golden flickies that attack independently. No mainline Sonic game has used the Super Emerald since 1994, which makes their entire palette, marigold, vermilion, platinum, aquamarine, a set of emerald colors that existed for exactly one release and were never seen again. Sonic Origins in 2022 reissued Sonic 3 and Knuckles and brought them back for the first time in 28 years, unchanged. Master Emerald, one stone that outranks all seven. The Master Emerald is a large green gem housed on Angel Island, and its defining property is that it controls chaos energy rather than producing it. The traditional chant associated with it holds that the emeralds are the servers, and the controller is the one that unifies them. Practically, it can neutralize, amplify, or nullify the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and it is the reason Angel Island floats in the sky rather than sitting in the ocean. It is guarded by Knuckles the Echidna, whose entire character premise is that he is the last of a line assigned to protect it, and has essentially never left. The Master Emerald's most consequential appearance is Sonic Adventure, released in Japan on 23 December 1998, which opens with the water creature Chaos shattering it into fragments, dropping Angel Island into the sea and scattering the shards across the game's hub world for Knuckles to recover. That structure, break the emerald, spend the game rebuilding it, has been reused repeatedly since. It also carries into the films. The 2022 feature Sonic the Hedgehog 2 makes the Master Emerald the central artifact of its plot, keeping the green color and the shattering. Of every object in the series, it is the one with the most consistent identity across every version of the continuity. Soul Emeralds. 7 emeralds from an entirely different dimension. Introduced in Sonic Rush on the Nintendo DS in November 2005, the Soul Emeralds are the counterparts to the Chaos Emeralds in the parallel world ruled by Blaze the Cat, and they function the same way in her hands that Chaos Emeralds do in Sonic's. Collect all 7, and she transforms into Burning Blaze, a purple to white superform wreathed in flame, rather than the gold glow Sonic gets. The colors are close to the Chaos Emerald set without duplicating it. Red, blue, yellow, green, white, turquoise, and purple. The distinguishing visual detail is the cut. Chaos Emeralds in modern art are brilliant cut, the round 58-facet shape, while the Soul Emeralds are rendered in a true emerald cut, the rectangular step cut with clipped corners that the actual gemstone trade names after emeralds. It is a small, precise piece of art direction that lets you tell the two sets apart in a single frame with no dialogue. Narratively, the Soul Emeralds anchor Blaze's entire arc, because her role as their guardian mirrors Knuckles' relationship with the Master Emerald almost exactly, and Sonic Rush Adventure in 2007 built a second game around recovering them. 2 dimensions, 2 sets of 7, 2 guardians. The symmetry is deliberate. The white Soul Emerald is the one that causes the most confusion, because it sits in the same palette slot as the white Chaos Emerald, and only the rectangular cut separates them, and Sonic Rush's dual protagonist structure puts both sets on screen within the same game. The turquoise Soul Emerald is the genuine outlier. It is the only color in either set that has no equivalent on the other side, closer to the cyan Chaos Emerald than anything but not the same shade. Fake Emerald. Somebody built a counterfeit, and it worked. In Sonic Adventure 2, released on 19 June 2001, Tails constructs a fake Chaos Emerald, a fabricated stone designed to be indistinguishable from a real one on inspection, produced specifically to deceive Dr. Eggman during the race to assemble all 7 for the Eclipse cannon. The fake looks correct, scans correct at a glance, and carries no chaos energy whatsoever, which is exactly the point. Its existence raises a genuinely interesting question the series never fully answers. If a two-tailed fox with a workshop can manufacture something visually identical to an artifact described as having unlimited power, then whatever makes an emerald real is not its material or its cut. It is the energy, and the energy cannot be faked. The fake emerald's deployment aboard the Space Colony Ark is one of the sharper plot beats in a game full of them, and it is the only time in the mainline series that the emeralds are defeated by engineering rather than by force. The color is deliberately unremarkable. It is built to blend into a set of 7, not to stand out. It is the emerald defined entirely by what it lacks, and the only one in the franchise with a manufacturer. It is also, strictly speaking, the 8th emerald, a stone that brings the on-screen count above the sacred 7 without breaking the rule, because the rule was never about how many emeralds exist. It was always about how many working ones you can gather at once. Frontier's Chaos Emeralds. The most recent mainline treatment locks them inside monsters. Sonic Frontiers, released on 8 November 2022, scatters the 7 Chaos Emeralds across the Starfall Islands, and recovering them is the spine of the entire game. Each island's emeralds are sealed behind vaults, guardian puzzles, and ultimately the enormous titans that stand at each island's summit. The structural consequence is significant, because the emeralds gate the supersonic transformation and the titans can only be fought as supersonic. Frontiers is the first mainline game where going super is not an optional flourish for completionists, but the required scripted method of clearing every major boss in the game. The emeralds themselves retain the modern canonical 7: green, red, blue, yellow, purple, cyan, and white, rendered as brilliant cut translucent stones with a soft internal glow, but the game surrounds them with a distinctly different visual language, framing them against the cold blue geometry of cyberspace and the ancient stone of the islands rather than the bright cartoon palettes of earlier titles. It also treats them as genuinely dangerous. Sonic's prolonged exposure to cyberspace, combined with the strain of repeated super transformations, drives the plot's central threat to his body. 31 years after they first appeared as bonus stage collectibles, the emeralds finally have a cost attached. It is also the first mainline game to make the 7 feel scarce. In the classic titles, an emerald was a reward for a well-played bonus round, obtainable in a couple of minutes. In Frontiers, a single stone can represent an hour of island traversal, and the game deliberately withholds the last one until the final act of each region. Movie Emerald. The films rebuilt the emeralds from scratch. Paramount's Sonic the Hedgehog 2, released on 8 April 2022, made the Master Emerald its central object, and the film's version is a large, faceted green gem with an internal light source and a visible geometric core, considerably more machined-looking than the smooth game version, closer to a piece of alien technology than a natural mineral. The film also gave it an explicit power that the games treat more loosely. Touching it grants the holder the ability to turn thoughts into physical reality, a formulation broad enough to justify anything the plot needs. Crucially, the film kept the shattering. As in Sonic Adventure in 1998, the emerald breaks and must be restored, and the fragments carry the same soft green glow as the whole. Green was never in question. Every version of this artifact across every continuity has been green, and the films had no reason to be the ones to change it. The wider Chaos Emeralds arrive later in the film series, where they retain the multicolored, brilliant cut look of the modern games, rather than the machined aesthetic of the Master Emerald. It is the clearest demonstration that after 34 years, the color rules for these stones are now effectively fixed. Green means control. 7 colors mean power. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.